The AAMC is pleased to welcome you to today's Preparing for the MCAT Exam webinar. We are recording. We'll make the archive available after, and we'll email you once we post it. We did mute all participant audio. If you need help, please send us a message. The presentation includes time for Q&A, and you may submit a question at any time by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. It's now my pleasure to welcome Lauren Vergara. Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm Lauren Vergara, Product Manager for MCAT Prep. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm going to share with you some information about the MCAT exam and the resources the AAMC offers to help you prepare. And what is the AAMC? The AAMC is dedicated to improving the health of people everywhere through medical education, clinical care, biomedical research, and community collaborations. What that looks like in the stage of the journey that you are in is that the AAMC administers the MCAT exam and provides resources to support you throughout the AMCAT application process and well into your career as a resident and practicing physician. So in our session today, I'm going to start with a quick overview of the exam. Then we're going to talk about study strategies. We will review the MCAT resources offered by the AAMC and provide some suggestions for how you use them in a study plan. We'll talk about the other resources we offer, and then we'll end the hour by taking your questions. You are probably already familiar with the format of the exam, but I'll just go over it quickly. The MCAT exam is a standardized multiple choice exam that tests your knowledge of concepts and skills that medical school faculty and physicians, as well as medical students and residents, identified as important to know when you start medical school. You likely already know that the MCAT assesses your knowledge of natural, behavioral, and social sciences concepts and principles, but it also assesses problem solving and critical thinking. This exam tests not just what you know, but how you apply your knowledge to solve problems. And as you prepare, please remember that your MCAT scores are just one piece of your overall application to medical schools. While it is important, it's just one piece of many that admissions committees use to evaluate your readiness for their programs. They're also looking at your transcripts, your work and volunteer experiences, essays, letters of recommendation, and to get to know you through your interviews throughout the admissions process. The exam includes 4 sections. Again, each question is multiple choice. There are 2 sections in the natural sciences: biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, chemical and physical foundations of biological systems. There's the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior, and the critical analysis and reasoning skills section, also known as CARS. The concepts tested in the science sections of the exam are found in classes you have taken or may be taking right now. These concepts are taught at most undergrad institutions in intro biology, physics, psychology, sociology, and first semester biochem, as well as general and organic chemistry. The CARS section is very similar to other reading comprehension and reasoning tests that you have taken throughout your academic careers. It includes passages and questions that test your ability to comprehend and analyze what you read. The passages that you will be presented with pull from humanities and social sciences disciplines, including philosophy, ethics, population health, and the studies of diverse culture. This section requires no specific content or disciplinary knowledge. All of the information that you need is provided in the passages and questions themselves. Many of the resources that I'm going to talk about today are available in the MCAT Official Prep Hub, so I want to make sure you know how to log in. You can find it at aamc.org/MCATprep, and it's going to be that first blue button on the upper right side of the page. You'll need your AAMC ID to sign in. It will be the same username and password that you use to register for the exam, purchase products, submit your AMCAT application, and so on. This is where you will access the free resources we offer, as well as any practice products you might have purchased. All of the links in these slides are also going to be on the handout that's pasted in the chat, and will get emailed to you all after. So there's no need to save any of the links now. And then just a reminder, this presentation is being recorded and will be available later. Now, let's talk about how you can get started. First, you need a study plan. Before you jump in and start practicing, it's best to take a step back and make a plan. You should consider what tasks to include in your study plan. On our website, we have a page called Creating Your MCAT Exam Study Plan, and it has suggestions for how to learn the content and skills you're responsible for knowing on test day to help you get started on a path to success. You need to understand what will be tested and also have access to materials that can be used to review or learn the exam content. You also want to make sure you are using active learning strategies for content review and practice questions. We will talk more about active learning later, but active learning requires engaging with the content, not just passively reading or watching. And you will need to take full-length practice exams. The best way to judge how you will perform on your actual exam is by the score you receive on an AAMC practice exam. As we go through this webinar, we will share resources that the AAMC makes available to you and provide some tips for how to get the most out of the time you spend with them. We'll talk about all these steps, and you can see an overview of this on that webpage. So I'll start with the content covered on the test and content review. In order to start your content review, you need to know what's on the test. The AAMC offers a resource called the What's on the MCAT Exam Content Outline that provides information about what will be tested on the exam. We have a few formats to explore this tool. We have a PDF. We've heard from some advisors that they have recommended students keep a copy of the PDF alongside their studying throughout their classes before taking the exam so that they can keep track of the relevant content as it's covered. We also have the content broken down on our website and also as a free course in the MCAT Official Prep Hub. The version in the Prep Hub has all the same information from the PDF and the website, but we also gathered some free resources for content review. And then we retired our printed official guide to the MCAT exam, and we took all of those questions from that product and added them for free into the MCAT content outline. So now there's 30 questions from each of the 4 sections included in the content outline. And I'll show you that in a few minutes. As you plan your content review time, prioritize the areas where you have knowledge gaps so that you can make the most of your prep time. One way to do this is by identifying the areas where you have high, medium, or low confidence in your knowledge of the material. The content outline course in the Prep Hub has a feature that allows you to track your confidence level for each content category of the exam, and I'll show you that in a minute. Regardless of where you start, your goal will be to try and move those low confidence areas to medium and then the medium to high. If you aren't sure of your knowledge gaps, you might want to consider taking the AAMC's free sample test to start. This is a full-length practice test that will not give you a total score, but you will be able to see what you got right and wrong. You can review your results in each section using the Content and Skills Breakdown tab in the score report, which I'll show you. So I might start by reading the PDF to see an overview of what's tested, then take the sample test to identify knowledge gaps and go through my results on the sample test alongside the content review outline in the MCAT Official Prep Hub. So I'll take a minute now to show you what that looks like. And I'm going to start in the sample test just to show you where the content and skills breakdown is. Okay, so now I'm starting in the MCAT Official Prep Hub. This is the user portal. So I'm gonna go into the sample test to start. So it's in my completed section here. Okay, let me open the study button. Okay, so I've already taken the exam and now I have to review the score report to see the content and skills breakdown. So remember, there's no score included on this one, which makes it, great for a diagnostic instead of a mile marker later for how you're doing. Okay, so I have to go into a section first. I'm in the PSBB section, and then it's that 4th tab, the content and skills breakdown. So here I've got all of the foundational concepts and then the content categories. And I can see how many questions I got, right and wrong out of each of those content categories. So using this information, I'm going to take that and apply it into the content outline and mark my confidence levels based on how I did here. So I've got another tab open. Since I'm working on this one, it's at the top, but if you are filtering it down, it's in the study resources here. And it's free, so it's available for everyone without buying any products. You just log into the hub and you're going to see the content outline. Okay, so it's going to drop me into the plan view, which just goes in kind of the same order as the PDF through all of the topics. I'm going to skip around, so I'm going to go into the table of contents here, which is the task view. And again, I've got my foundational concepts, I've got my content categories, but here's all the topics listed. So this is what I meant by it's not like exactly a one-to-one, because here you've got the topics that you can mark as high, low, or medium confidence. And then in the sample test, you've got the content categories, and then you kind of have to figure out how you did in each of the topics. So I'm going to go into the PSVB section again, just to show you what these topics look like. So this is the content category. These are the topics included in that content category. And then we broke them up across a few pages just because it gets a little overwhelming on one page. So consciousness is one of the topics. We've mapped these to some open access resources. We've got Khan Academy, which has 3,000 practice questions, 1,100 videos across all 4 sections of the test. But since most people are probably familiar with Khan Academy, I'm just going to show you OpenStax. We have mostly OpenStax content mapped in here, and there's another open access textbook included too. But so OpenStax, I'm going to just open the chapter. You can read the lesson here, but I wanted to highlight that they include these review questions. So you can use active learning strategies within OpenStax and Khan Academy too, of course. So there's review questions, so you can just review what you learned to reinforce the concepts. And then they also have these critical thinking questions. So they're not specifically MCAT style questions, but you can see that they show you how to apply what you just learned to the real world. The first one is about healthcare workers and rotating shifts. So you can see how that can be helpful for reinforcing the concepts. Okay, so we have all of these topics mapped to multiple sources. We're not saying that you need to review them all, but we wanted to give you choices. If you want to watch videos, we have Khan. If you'd rather read a chapter, we have OpenStax, and there's practice questions in both of these options. And then also within the content outline, we have the practice questions. Again, these are from the official guide to the MCAT exam. So if you've taken that before as part of the official guide, these are just going to be the same questions. But if you haven't taken those before, then here's a set of 30 questions from each of the sections that's included for free for everyone. There's a survey in here. So if you use this resource and have some ideas or feedback on how we can make it better, please send that to us. And I'm just going to pause here. Sometimes questions come in as I'm going through this. So Lauren, did you see any questions that I should answer or anything I skipped over in the sample test or the content outline?
Just a couple of things in terms of navigating to this. So one of the, got a question about where can they find the sample test. So I don't know if maybe you can even show going to the prep to the prep hub into, or logging in where you go to find the prep hub and then also where the sample test is.
Yeah, so, I must have typed it wrong. So I'm just going to go into the prep hub. So if you go to our kind of our prep homepage in the AAMC and then start in the official prep hub and log in, you're going to get into kind of the homepage. So everyone's going to have the sample test for free on this homepage. You can filter it out by, if you have more than just the sample test, you can filter it out for the practice exams and then go into study to actually use the exam.
And then a couple students had asked whether or not they could take the practice exams more than once. Maybe we could address that.
Yes, you can. There's a reset here. You can take them as many times as you want, and then you'll just see all of the score reports here. So if you have it more than one, you'll get the I think the best score report might I think that's one, but in the scored ones, you'll get like a best score report, most recent, and then all of them will be visible here, but you can reset them and take them as many times as you'd like. Any other questions I should address before going back into the presentation?
I think that's good for now. And we will have time for questions at the end. So we will answer many more questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay, perfect. Then I will get back into the presentation, try to share the right screen. Okay, very good. So there are many ways to review content, and there's no one right answer. And what works best will vary from person to person. So you can use those Khan Academy and OpenStax resources in the content outline course for content review. You can review content by watching videos, reading, reviewing flashcards, studying with others, creating vocabulary lists, and participating in online forums. Medical students we have talked to really emphasize the importance of finding a study partner or study group to help hold you accountable to your study plan, but also work through questions and challenging concepts. So try out a few different things to see what works best for you, and don't be afraid to try something new if it doesn't seem to be working. During these webinars, we often get asked how long to focus on content review before doing practice questions. And the answer is that the two things need to be happening at the same time. For content review to be effective, you need to remember what you learned and be able to apply it when answering MCAT questions. Retrieval practice and practice questions will help you get there. Have you ever spent time studying material only to feel like you have forgotten everything you read the next day? This is completely normal, but there are learning strategies you can implement to make sure the time you spent studying is effective. Retrieval practice is pulling information out rather than reading and rereading content. Deliberately recalling information forces us to examine what we know. By pulling the information out of your memory, you're boosting learning and memory so that you can retrieve the content when needed. Retrieval practice is an important technique that will help you retain and apply the content you are learning. Examples of retrieval practice are similar to some of the content review practices discussed earlier, but the emphasis now is on pulling the information out of your memory. So if you read a chapter in a book or watch a video, afterwards write a summary or create a concept map from memory based on what you learned. You can use flashcards and vocabulary lists, but make sure you are testing yourself by pulling out the relevant information and not just memorizing them. Teach backs with friends is a great technique. Whenever possible, try to teach back concepts where you are less sure of yourself, since this is where you need to learn. You can also use the knowledge you just learned by applying the concepts studied to real life examples. Those OpenStax questions that the OpenStax lessons that I showed you have prompts at the end of each chapter to help you do that. You also need to do practice questions, lots of practice questions. And what is the role of practice questions? Practice questions serve as a tool for active learning and reinforcement of concepts. Practice questions require you to apply your knowledge. They help you build confidence, and they will help you improve your critical thinking. MCAT questions don't test just your knowledge of concepts, but require you to apply that knowledge to solve problems. So I'll get into the resources we offer, but first I wanted to tell you what's new for the upcoming testing year. We are offering a new practice exam. It's another scored full-length exam that has explanations for all 4 answer choices, like all of our other newer products do. It's $35, just like our other practice exams, and is included in the online bundle. We used to have the printed official guide to the MCAT exam that we don't sell anymore. All of the information from the guide can be found on our website. That product had 120 practice questions that were also available online. Those questions are now in the free resource, the What's on the MCAT exam content outline that I showed you earlier, and that's free for everyone in the Prep Hub. We have some other updates. In the 2023 testing year, we had released a new practice exam and made it free. But since it was the 5th practice exam, we have now renamed it to Practice Exam 5. It's now a paid product going forward, but we made Practice Exam 1 free, so we still offer 2 free practice exams. We just swapped what was free and what was paid to make the products go in a more logical order. Coming on December 16th, next week, we will offer the option to renew your prep products for 3 or 6 months when your 1-year subscription expires. You will have to make that purchase within 60 days of your 1-year subscription expiring, and you can find details of that purchase option in the AAMC store now. And the AAMC offers question sets for practice. Among the question sets, we have subject-specific question packs, the section bank, the CARS diagnostic tool, and some smaller question sets. For the natural science sections of the exam, you may want to start by working through the biology, chemistry, and physics question packs. Use these questions to reinforce your content review and identify any gaps. As you become more comfortable with these questions, you can move on to the smaller question sets and the section banks. Every set of practice questions you complete is a chance to practice retrieving the information you learned and applying it to MCAT style questions. After completing the questions, spend time reviewing your results to understand why you got a question wrong, and if there's content you still need to review. We often get asked how to prepare for the CARS section of the exam. The approach to CARS can feel challenging because there's no specific content you can study. Answering CARS questions doesn't require any outside knowledge, but it does require that you understand what you read and then be able to use your analysis and reasoning skills to answer these questions. Becoming familiar with the CARS questions and improving your ability to answer them is something that will just take time and practice. We do have several resources to help you. First, take the time to review the CARS section of the content outline. This will help you understand the format of the exam and what is being measured and what you are being asked to do. Next, as I mentioned earlier, a good place to start with your prep is taking the unscored free sample test. When you do your review of the CARS section in the sample test, you will find videos where a cognitive scientist talks you through how to approach the questions for 4 different passage sets. This is a great way to start shaping your approach to CARS questions. Khan Academy is another free resource where you can find more videos, worked examples, and practice passages. The CARS diagnostic tool provides both guidance and practice questions, plus more of those cognitive scientist videos on how to approach the passages. This product provides an overview of each of the skills tested, helps you identify your strengths and weaknesses among the skills, and then leaves you with some strategies that might help you improve those skills. We also offer 2 specific CARS question packs, each with 120 questions. We recommend starting your CARS review early and then keep practicing questions regularly. After completing a practice session or practice exam, make sure you spend time reviewing your questions you got wrong and try to understand what you missed and how to apply those learnings to your next set of practice questions. Now that we've covered content review and using practice questions for retrieval practice, let's talk about practice exams. Practice exams should serve as your mile markers, a way to measure improvement and distance from your goal. To best utilize your practice exams, schedule your practice exams at regular intervals. Maybe that's weekly leading up to your test day. Take a full-length practice exam under real or close to real test day conditions in the last few weeks before your exam is something every examinee should do. Take under time conditions. Some people even have the same meal that they'll have on test day. To recreate exam conditions, we often suggest working with an advisor to create a mock exam environment. We have resources on our website that serve as checklists for mock exams. Do a complete review of all incorrect and flagged questions to identify why you got them wrong. Spend your time between exams reviewing and relearning content areas where you made mistakes. And of course, please read the MCAT Essentials for all the information on what to expect for test day, as well as our 10 tips for exam day. You'll want to make sure you have your travel to the test center planned in advance so that you're not rushed the morning of. You don't want any surprises on test day. The AAMC offers 7 full-length practice exams, and 2 of those are free. We offer the free unscored sample test and practice 1, which are free. The sample test has the videos on how to approach 4 CARS passages and is a good place to start to identify content gaps. Using the practice test in the Prep Hub, you can also try out the exam features, including optional keyboard shortcuts and highlighting and strike-through tools. For a timed test, you will want to practice those features in advance instead of learning them on test day. We offer a few different bundles, but our most popular and the best value is the online only bundle. The online only bundle includes all of our online products, those 5 practice exams, and our 10 question sets, including the CARS diagnostic and section banks. Please note that the online only bundle is included as a benefit of our fee assistance program, and I'll talk a little bit more about fee assistance in a moment. We have just a few more resources to share before moving to the Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and start using the Q&A option, and we'll be getting to them soon. So the AAMC Fee Assistance Program can greatly reduce your fees related to taking and preparing for the MCAT and medical school applications. The eligibility requirements are based on family size and income. To qualify, your family income has to be equal to or lesser than 400% of the federal poverty level. And just to give you an example of what that looks like, for a family of 4, 400% of the poverty level would be an annual income of $128,600. The program includes the MCAT Prep online only bundle for free, as well as reduced test fees, application fees, among other benefits. We recommend that you apply at least 10 days in advance of when you want to use your benefits. The benefits are not retroactive, so you want to make sure you are approved before registering for an exam or purchasing any products. The application is currently closed for 2025, but it's going to open back up in early 2026. We also provide a fee assistance program for Canadian examinees. The benefits offered are more limited, and the application process and eligibility requirements are a little different. You can go to the link on this page to find more information about the program available for both US and Canadian examinees. I'd like to share some other resources we offer. The pre-med resources page provides a calendar of pre-med events and guidance on how to apply through AMCAS and finance medical school. There are also recorded webinars on the fee assistance program, the preview professional readiness exam, and webinars with medical students on how they prepared for the MCAT exam. For more tips on how to prepare for the MCAT exam, you can watch the recording of our webinar from earlier this year with medical education specialist Dr. Shavana Wynn. She went into a lot more detail on evidence-based active learning techniques and how to incorporate some of the AAMC's free resources into your study plan. You can find a recording of that webinar as well as others at aamc.org/premed resources. You'll need to select the pre-med webinar section on that page, which I've highlighted here. Okay, and with that, it's time for the Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to Dawn Smith, our Outreach and Engagement Manager. She's going to moderate. And then Lauren Bowser, the Director of Test Prep, will join us again to answer questions.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, everybody. My name is Dawn Smith. I am the MCAT Manager of Outreach and Engagement, and I am going to monitor our questions today. Thank you, everybody, for putting in some great questions in the Q&A box. I also wanted to mention we tried putting in the chat our link to resources, and I'm not sure if that did go through. We've had some technical difficulties, so if that didn't go through, we'll be sure to send that when we send out the presentation. So don't worry about that. We will get you all the resources. They will be sent through. And just a reminder, you'll be getting the recording of this webinar and the presentation. You'll be getting that emailed to you after today's webinar. So you will get everything. Just be patient. Technology is sometimes a little bit of a challenge, but you will get it. Okay, on to the questions. The first question is, has anything changed in the MCAT? Can we expect any changes in the MCAT from last year and this year?
So the MCAT exam, the content that's tested on the MCAT exam has not changed since 2015. So one of the resources that Lauren talked about was the What's on the MCAT exam content outline. And that document details exactly what is tested on the MCAT in each of the 4 sections. And again, the MCAT was revised in 2015, and that content outline, that content that's on test, has not changed since then. We do release new materials, we do release new practice exams, so you have fresh content to use in addition to the things that are already there. But the content of the test has not changed. There have been some things I've seen on social media where people have talked about, or things have talked about the test is different, or with the new practice exam, things are different. The test is still measuring the same things, but keeping in mind, the test is primarily, you need science knowledge, but it's a reasoning test. So that's always been what the test is. When you look at the content outline and details what the test is measuring, what you need to know, yes, you have to have that content knowledge, but you need to be able to apply that content knowledge. And much of the test is passage based. So just kind of clarifying, there's nothing about the test in terms of what is testing this year that's different from previous years.
Okay, and Lauren, can students use products from previous years or across years, or do they need to update the product each year?
No, I mean, if new product, like again, we launched a new practice exam, I would definitely recommend the students use the new practice exam that we've launched. And as we launch new products, having more is always good. But yeah, if you know somebody that took the MCAT last year and they have a set of textbooks that they used and they really liked and recommended, as long as they're that they're published after the update in 2015, the information in there should be relevant. So you do not need the most current version. I mean, current version is fine, but as long as it's from the MCAT, past 2015, you should be good.
Okay, can you talk about the differences between the different question sets that were discussed?
Trying to
I
think
think
what
that sorry,
yeah,
I think the different, yeah.
So we have multiple question packs and question sets. So practice exams are full-length practice exams that mirror the testing experience. They're the 4 sections and the same number of questions as the exam, and timed in a similar way. The practice questions are there's multiple of them. So we have question packs that are subject specific. So we have a question pack that is all chemistry questions, or all physics questions, or all cars questions. And we also have section banks, which are there's 2 of them, and each of them have 300 questions in them, but it's 100 questions in each of the 4 sections of the test. So there's questions that are similar, 100 questions that are similar to the biology section of the test, the chemistry and physics, and then the other section. The important thing about practice questions is that they're not exactly like the exam, but they are great for helping you to kind of refine and use your content knowledge that you've been working on. Our practice questions are written in the format of the MCAT exam. So while they're not a full-length exam, which you definitely need to take, they're a great way to test your content knowledge that you've been doing, and testing your ability to apply that knowledge to an MCAT style question and identify where you have gaps for additional review. So they're similar to the MCAT exam in the sense that they're written in a similar way, and they're asking you to apply that knowledge, but because they're set up in a way that they're by different subjects and different groupings, you can kind of use them how it makes the most sense for you. They're not the same as a full-length exam, but they are similar in the way that the MCAT tests your knowledge.
Is Khan Academy being discontinued?
No, it is not. So, up until just a few days ago, if you had looked at the Khan Academy website, you would see a reference to that we have a partnership with Khan Academy, and that we partner with them to make this content available. And that partnership was through 2026. So we get a lot of questions on, is Khan going away in 2026? The answer to that is no. We've been working with Khan for a while, talking about continuing that partnership, and we've agreed to continue working with them. So Khan Academy, the message on the website has been updated, so it no longer says ending in 2026, and we will be continuing that information will be continue to be available going forward. And Khan has even invested, had found some additional grant funding and has been investing in improving the materials and updating the passages that are in their materials. So it will continue to be around for the foreseeable future.
Okay, you were talking a little bit about the difficulty of the sample tests and the different products. Do you feel that the sample tests and the different products are accurate to how hard and the difficulty level of the MCAT?
So all of those products, the questions are created by the people who make the MCAT exam, who write those questions. So and questions vary in difficulty across the MCAT exam. They vary in difficulty across the different products. There's a little bit of difference. Your practice exams are going to be your most representative of the actual testing experience. The question packs may have some slight differences. Some students say that the biology question packs feel a little easier than the section banks. And there could be some slight differences in there, but again, the purpose of them are different. Your biology question pack is really around, okay, you've spent time reviewing the biology. You want to test how are you doing at applying that knowledge and understanding what you need to know to answer the questions. And so they kind of serve different purposes in the process, but they're all representative of the material that's tested on the MCAT exam. And so they're all great practice, but your practice exams are going to be your most representative of the actual test experience.
Do you think there's a specific order that's recommended to work through are the different materials that the AAMC offers?
So there's not really a specific order. It kind of depends on your personal experience. Definitely would recommend that as you spending some time, reviewing and looking at the content, reviewing different resources. I would recommend spending time with practice question products to really refine what you know and don't know and how you're doing at applying your knowledge, improving those and performing better on those before you necessarily jump into the practice exams, because the practice exams are really where you're going to kind of really hone your practice and start looking at your score and how you're progressing and what that looks like. And you don't want to necessarily take those practice exams especially the AAMC ones too early, where you still have a lot of gaps in your knowledge, because it's still going to tell you something about how you perform, but there's a lot of other resources to really hone in on your content knowledge and your gaps. Use those in that process, and then as you get a little bit closer to your test date, you're going to transition to your practice exams. You're going to take full-length practice exams. You're going to look at what you got wrong, any questions you flagged because you were unsure, why did you get it wrong, and use that again to go back and see, okay, what will you do different next time? So I would recommend the practice question products and then transition into the practice exams as you get a little bit closer. And then in the practice exams that, we reordered them based on kind of the years in the order they were published. And, again, I would start with, the earlier tests first, and then again, transition to the ones that are a little newer as you're getting closer to your test date.
And hey, Dawn, can I jump in with a few questions? I'll give Lauren a break. I saw that there have been a lot of questions about the sample test, and I think that it's unscored might be a little confusing. So it is unscored. It does not give you a 500 or a 515 at the end of it. But it's going to tell you what you got right and wrong. So we recommend using it at the beginning because you can use the content and skills breakdown to see, how you did in each section, how many you got right and wrong in each of those foundational concepts and content categories. So that's what we mean by like unscored. There's no score, but it does give you that feedback that's useful at the beginning. And there was another question about if you could just take one section of it, and sort of. So if you take one section of it, it's not going to give you a score immediately until you just like skip to the end, and then you can hit submit, and then you could review just that section. But it would show you just, like you got wrong, all the questions in the other ones. Like when I showed mine, it was, I skipped most of the questions. So it shows 0 out of 0. So if you wanted to see just one section, you could take that section, skip all the other questions, and then submit. And then there have been a lot of questions about the fee assistance program. That it's currently closed, and it's going to open up in early 2026. There's no exact dates yet. So it's like January or February of 2026, but you'll just have to check on our website, or if you sign up for the Examine update, I think they usually include things like that in their updates too for when it reopens. But like it'll probably be like January, February. No dates yet. Okay, thanks for letting me jump in.
There's a really good question. Do our practices have timers built in to mimic the actual timing on the exam?
Yeah, the practice exams do. Yes, they are timed the same as the actual exam. The practice question products, they keep track of how long you spend in them, and you can see how long you took those questions, but they're not timed in the same way because they're not they're a different number of questions than the actual exam, but the practice exams themselves, yes, are timed exactly like the actual exam.
There is a question that I'm actually going to answer. What is the NAAHP? I just wanted to jump in here. That's the National Association of Academic Health Professionals, and we can probably pop a link into the chat for anyone that needs to find an academic advisor or a health advisor if you do not have one. So we can help you get that. And that's just an association for health advisors and academic advisors, and they can help you find an advisor if you need one. Okay. How many weeks before the exam should students aim to start practice exams?
I mean, again, there's no real answer, but I would it depends on you as a student and how you're doing and how you're feeling about closing the gaps in your content knowledge. But we definitely recommend that you're taking all of the AAMC practice exams. One practice exam is not going to give you a good indication. You should be taking multiple practice exams. So, it really depends. Could be, 2 months before, and you're taking one a week, like every weekend, taking a full length exam and then spending time that week doing review and looking things up, and then taking one the next week. Some students will start a little bit earlier and maybe have, 2 weeks between the exams, or, the first 2 or 3 they spread out over a few weeks. And then the last maybe like 4 weeks before their exam, they're doing one every week. So you really kind of have to look at your schedule. Keep in mind that the full length exam is going to take about 7.5 hours. So you need a full day to do it. So it's really kind of best to take a look at your kind of schedule that you have. And again, you want to make sure that after you take the test, you do spend a good amount of time reviewing everything you got wrong or everything that you flagged, and then identifying, but for your next test, what are you going to do? Did you misread? Okay, how do you slow down and make sure you do it right? Or can you use highlighting to make sure you get keywords? Was there a content area that you missed something and you need to spend some time practicing it? So after you do it, you should have some kind of plan of how you're going to use what you learned and then apply it to the next test. So you don't want to take them like back to back to back, because there's no time for, learning in between.
Okay, we have two questions sort of similar or related, I could say. One is, how do you recommend we improve time management in our preparation? And then somewhat similar, is there a recommended way to prepare for the test stamina separate from content review?
So answering the stamina, I mean, the big thing with that, again, the test is long. And that's really one of the important parts of those full length exams that you're taking. So, if you're thinking about, if you only think about the practice exams as, oh, do I know this question? How am I doing with this question? And then you might be able to say, okay, well, I'm just going to take one section today and I'll take another section tomorrow. And then, I'll finish it all over a course of an entire weekend. But that does not mimic your test day experience. So on test day, you're going to have to do the whole thing. So for those practice exams, yes, it is about applying the knowledge and evaluating where you're scoring and where you're still making mistakes, but it's also about your test taking strategy in the sense of, building up that endurance to make it through that whole test. You have breaks in between, kind of thinking about, or, a snack that you might want. Okay, this is the snack I think I'm going to have on break. You should have that snack. You should do all of those things to make it as close to test day as possible. So one, you have no surprises, but also that you're prepared. And if you do something on your first exam and like, oh, that didn't really work very well, you change it for the next one. So those practice and gives you opportunity to kind of refine what test day is going to look like for you. And Dawn, what was the other question? I'm sorry.
That was really just improving time management throughout the study process.
Yeah, and that's, again, doing additional practice questions is important. Maybe when you first start, you don't really worry about how long it takes you to get through the questions, but as you do more, you look at that timing. If you take your first practice exam and you ran out of time, then you may need to look and say, okay, how are you approaching, especially with cars, how are you approaching the reading? And then, students often ask, like, how long should I study each day? And I think I saw in like one of the questions that came in before this was, is it more about quality or quantity? It's definitely about quality. If you say, okay, I'm going to spend 6 hours a day studying for the MCAT, but, then you realize that you're staring out the window for an hour of it because you can't think anymore. Make sure you give yourselves break. Make sure that if it's not absorbing, that you stop and do something else. You just have to kind of listen to yourself and kind of see what's working and then make adjustments when it's not.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of questions about what's the best study plan? How do I create a study plan? And I know Lauren went through some of, kind of the beginning and the basics of how to devise a study plan, but several questions about how much time do I spend putting this together, and where do I start? And I think we have a lot of great resources online on our site, and to start putting that together.
Yeah, and I would just kind of add that, we have a learning specialist that we work with. Lauren mentioned her, Dr. Shavana Wynn, and she generally recommends if you're at the early start of this process, kind of plan for your 6 months to prepare for the MCAT. Not everybody will need 6 months, but give yourself 6 months and give yourself time at the beginning to review that content, using your active study strategies and making sure that you're learning it so you can transition into the practice questions and the practice exam. But think about it for 6 months. But the really big question is kind of, where are you starting? So, if you've maybe, and kind of being honest with yourself too, again, about where you're starting. So, when you were in school and you took, organic chemistry and you really struggled in that class, you may need more time because you're not just reviewing the material, you're learning it if it was an area, or maybe you're further away, you've been out of school for a few years and you haven't been as close to the science any longer. Those are things that as you look at what it's going to be testing, kind of where are you at with that knowledge? Is it kind of just a review, or are there some areas that you need to really relearn? It will take longer. Or if you have a lot of obligations that you are going to have less time to study, you will likely need more time. Whereas if you have the ability to really focus primarily on MCAT, you may be able to do it in a more condensed period of time. So it really, really depends on your situation in terms of how much content review you need, and also how much time you have available for studying.
What's the number one tip that I don't know if we can answer this. What's the number one tip that successful matriculants into med school would give to students who are studying for the MCAT?
That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
But I would suspect that just from things I've seen, other opportunities we've had to work with students, it's the practice exams. Take the full length practice exams as close to test day conditions as possible, and spend time after you've completed them, doing a review of what you've got wrong and what you flagged, and having a plan for how you approach it. The practice exams are probably the most important thing that you need to prep for the exam.
How would one track their mistakes in a way that improves their score?
So, in the score, in the products, you can, you get the breakdown of the questions, and you can read the questions, and you can do the content and skills review, so you can see, what content category these questions were at, and where you're at. But it's very personal, so it's hard to say, but it's as you review your questions and see what you got wrong. A lot of students have a spreadsheet that they'll work from, and they'll take a look at it and they'll make a note of saying, okay, I got this wrong because I didn't know this thing about amino acids or whatever it was, or I didn't know this thing. Some students will make flashcards. So, a lot of students get very dependent on flashcards during the prep, especially during content review. And flashcards can be great, but you should also be making flashcards and not just using pre-made decks that you're memorizing. So as you're going through and you find out that this, you got this wrong because you didn't know this thing, and you go back to your content resource and you find the information about that content area, make yourself a flashcard and help yourself to memorize it or to remember it so that you can apply it next time. But students use different things. A lot of students use flashcards. Some people make notes. Some people use spreadsheets that they track so that they can know where they want to spend their time when they're doing additional review in between practice sessions.
Does Khan Academy cover all of the content on the exam?
So it covers, it covers the majority of it. There may be some small areas in the content categories where there's some gaps. I'm not 100% sure, but it covers the majority of the material in the test. So it has videos for all of the content areas. It has practice questions, and then it has passage-based practice in there. So there may be some smaller gaps where things are covered a little bit less than others, but primarily the material that you need. But the big thing is that the AAMC content outline is the source for what is measured on the MCAT exam. And then the Khan Academy is the resource for doing content review or going back to review something that you need. Use the AAMC resources to identify what could be tested on the exam.
Are there any suggestions for how to learn strategies for passage questions?
So, there's a lot of resources out there. So certainly, taking a look online, seeing what's recommended, trying some different strategies, seeing if it works for you. When it comes to the CARs, which are all passage based, we do have videos there from the cognitive scientists put together that tells you how to approach the question. So I strongly recommend that you take a look at those. And there's also some in Khan Academy. There are videos associated with how to approach and break down the CARS passages. So I would definitely start with that. And then thinking about that from, you can think about the science passage and try to approach it similarly, but I would definitely take a look at some different online resources and see other things that are recommended, and then just try different things and see what works for you as you're working through it.
What would you say the best way to build confidence in your test taking ability and not second guessing your answers?
So I would recommend using some different strategies when you're doing practice questions to kind of get a sense of kind of what your thought process is to keep track of things. So if you're, doing, a practice exam or something, and you, use the strikeout features to kind of identify the questions you've eliminated, or in the practice questions there's options to say that to eliminate answers as you go through. I would use that functionality to look at things so that when you come back, and if you find that there's a question that you changed, maybe make a note of it so that you're looking at that and seeing so that when you're doing your review, you have that information available to you to say, okay, well, you changed the answer. Was it the right change or was it the wrong change? Did you change it away from the answer that was correct to something else? And in your review, thinking about why did you make that change? Was it just because you were kind of at the point where you were guessing either way, or is there something again that you just made a mistake? And you need to focus on that so that you don't make it again. And keeping in mind the questions that we have available, the practice questions, they are just like the questions that you'll see, but you're not going to see the exact same questions again. So it's really about, again, practicing how you apply your knowledge, the critical thinking involved in understanding what the question is asking you to do. So, you're not going to see the exact same question again, but understanding why you got it wrong will help you to make some adjustments for when you get, asked a different question in the future that maybe requires some of the same knowledge, or you need to reason through it in a similar way.
Where are videos from the cognitive scientists located?
So I can answer that. There were a few questions about the CARS videos and the cognitive scientist videos, and that's what I mentioned. We have a few resources, so you can start in Khan Academy because that's free, and there are worked examples where a cognitive scientist kind of reads a passage with you and says what you could highlight and how to approach the questions. So in Khan Academy, and then in the sample test, that free unscored sample test that you can use as a diagnostic. Once you take the CARS questions in the review section, you're going to see in 4 different passages, you're going to see the cognitive scientist goes through and explains like how she would approach the passage and the questions. And then in the CARS diagnostic tool. So that is one of our low cost products for sale, the CARS diagnostic, but that has videos also. So Khan Academy for free. Khan Academy for free, sample test for free, and then the CARS diagnostic tool if you buy that product. Those all have cognitive scientist videos on how to approach CARS passages.
And Lauren, can you talk for just a moment about some of the tools we have in our products, how you can highlight and strike out and use just some of our features that we have?
Yeah, so I think in the cognitive scientist videos, I think she mostly uses highlight. Like here's, what I'm gonna highlight as important. And I don't know if she uses strike through, for some of those kind of distracting items. So the exam does have a highlight option and strike through. I think strike through, you can definitely use it in all of the sections to, cross out the answers that you're eliminating. And then in CARS, yeah, I can't remember if she has a strategy of like kind of crossing out information in the CARS. But there's also in our practice products. So before you get to the exam, if you're just practicing, you can make notes, you can flag things for review. And then when you're reviewing, you can also like go back and like make yourself notes and flag things. You can mark high, low, or medium confidence in the practice questions. And then when you get to the actual MCAT exam, you'll have, I think, highlight and strike through and flagging questions to return to as the tools. Did I miss any, Lauren?
No, I think that was everything. I mean, I think one thing is that somebody had asked before, how do you keep track of, your things you want to review? The notes feature is something that's useful to keep in mind because you can add notes as you're doing, as you're in there, and there's in the tabs across where you can look at different things, you can see the notes associated with questions. So that's something also to keep in mind, that you can, do something external from the tool, but you can also add some notes inside as well if you want to go back and look at it later.
We just have we've like just a minute or two left. Do we want to talk real quick about questions about scratch paper for the exam? Now students are not given scratch paper, but can we talk a little bit about what students are given for the exam?
Yeah, I know that one. You do not get scratch paper. You get a whiteboard and it's a dry erase marker, but I don't think you can actually erase.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't have further details, but in the MCAT Essentials, it goes through everything for exam day, like what you're allowed to have in the test center. I saw some questions in the chat about like, can we bring snacks and water and things like that. So go through the MCAT Essentials and you will figure out in there like everything that has to go in your locker, which is all your food and your water and everything basically goes in your locker. You get, and we just got it pasted in the chat. So read the essentials for all the details of like what you can have and what you get, like the notebook information. So read the essentials to get all those details.
Thank you. That will also go through the tutorial and how the tutorial works before the exam as well. The essentials, the tutorial is also explained in the essentials. And that wraps it up for us. We are just at time. And someone asked if we will send the health advisor link as well. We put that in the chat. That is nahp.org. We put that in the chat. And I'll type that out one more time.
Yeah, and just to add, if you are still at a university, or if you, most universities have pre-health advisors on staff. Not all do, but many do. So you definitely check with your university. Even if you've already graduated, they may have a pre-health advisor on staff that you could work with.
Yes. And thanks so much. And we're handing it back to Jen. Thank you.
Thank you. Please do give us your feedback on today's session. An evaluation will pop up on your screen as soon as we close out. A reminder that we did record the session. We will email you when we post that. On behalf of the AAMC, have a great day.